Hey Ted, I'm ready to play my character. If they're guilty, they're dead.
Well, what about the other characters? They might not be up to killing.
Then they're guilty, and they're dead.
But Dave, Dungeons & Dragons is a group game. You kind of sounded like a little bit like a jerk.
Sounding dangerously close to guilty, Ted.
Well, let's talk about D&D player tips. Playing the antihero without being an a-hole.
Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Maybe it's your first time visiting Ted's basement. It's a place where we like to discuss news, views, and homebrews for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Sometimes we even talk about other role-playing games.
So if you don't want to miss a single video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and to tune to that notification bell.
Alright, so we're going to go over some do's and don'ts of playing an anti-hero in games like Dungeons & Dragons. This is pretty generic advice and it'll work for anything. But before we do, we want to give a shout out and a thank you to the sponsor for this video, Nord Games. They are running a sale right now with a special promo code that they gave us for you fine folks that you can use to get 20% off. It is Nerdarchy 20. Nerdarchy 20. It will be in the description. There will be a link as well, so you can go check it out. They've got so many great products over there. You know, they've kickstarted tons of books. We own them all. It is one of our favorite third-party publishers. We first found them from Revenge of the Horde, which is basically all kinds of monstrous humanoids. It was a really sweet book, and once we kickstarted that, we got that book in our hands, and we're like, hey, we really enjoyed your book. We even did a flip through on the channel of it. And we've had a great relationship with them ever since. But that's not all. They have more than books.
They also have loads of companion decks that you can use to boost out your gaming material, whether you want the loot decks, whether you want the critical hit decks, whether you want the creature decks. There's things that you're going to be able to use right behind the DM screen. The players don't have to know you weren't prepared. You slide those things out. Oh, what loot did you find? Well, let's see. Oh, look, you find, and you pull out the card. Behind the screen, they don't need to know what's going on. Oh, random encounter, boom, you go to the creature decks. You want to spice up your games using the critical hit or the critical fumble decks. There's a lot of fun and hilarious things that you can do and use with them. Highly recommend you check out Nord Games.
Right, check out that promo code down in the description. Now let's jump back into the video and discuss playing an anti-hero. I think the first thing we could kind of start with is the actual definition of an anti-hero.
All right, so I'm gonna go to my notes on this one just so we don't get it wrong. The definition is a protagonist or notable figure who is conspicuously lacking in heroic qualities.
So it's actually very vague, right? It's basically, is this the main character of the story? Yes or no? Are they heroic? Yes or no? So I feel like the biggest problem with anti-heroes or people wanting to play them is they're not actually playing anti-heroes. Like they think they are,
right,
but they're not. They might actually just be playing the villain. Matter of fact, if you dig deeper, you can see that an anti-hero is often the antithesis to the protagonist anyway, in a traditional story or a traditional hero.
So, when you look at, all of these things, it is hard. And, there are plenty of examples in, pop culture, books, movies, TV shows that you've got that central figure, whether it be the main person in a cast or one of like the major supporting roles, that still falls under the protagonist that people, they don't, readily associate with, they just, they're not the hero. They're not focused on, lifting everybody up. It's selfish. It's about them. But, it's a challenging role to do properly.
So there's a couple examples. The T-800 is a great example of the Terminator. He's kind of an anti-hero. He's not particularly good. He's not anything. He's a machine, right? But he's forced to be on the good side. He has to follow the orders of John Connor.
And it's, this one was, a great pick in my opinion, because he doesn't have a care for humanity. It was sent by John Connor, in the future. He's got to protect, John Connor. Everybody else be damned. I don't care. I will do whatever. So young John is like, no, you can't do that. And once he realizes that he's got full control to just be like, these are the program, the modules that you got to follow. Okay, great. I'll shoot them in the kneecap. I'll disable them, but I won't just kill everybody.
Makes me think of Firefly.
The Lord is a little bit sketchy on kneecaps.
Yeah. So, that's a great one. Obviously, the Punisher is a really famous one. He kills indiscriminately when it comes to criminals. If you're a criminal, you're guilty, you're dead, is good enough for him. Then you have Wolverine, who has a personal code.
It's like I'm the best at what I do, but what I do is not very nice.
Yeah, I mean, he's sometimes he's little more than an animal. So he doesn't fit the typical mold.
If you look at the X-Men movies, when the guards are when the soldiers are attacking the X-Mansion, he goes ape and he just is like, I'm just going to run these guys through. And they're just soldiers. They know I've got to follow a mission. They were told by their superior officers that there are dangerous people in this house, and they're using non-lethal force. They're trying to just, take them out. But Wolverine doesn't care. I'm on kill mode.
Also, another good one, more modern, is Walter White. So he starts out with like, oh, I need to make a lot of money, and he does something illegal to do it. And then with each decision he makes, he kind of goes down the darker and darker road. But he really does kind of start off like the anti-hero, I would say. So they're all great examples. And I think players, when they see these kind of characters, they want to emulate them, they want to play them. They seem like fun, but there's huge issues and problems with playing an anti-hero in a group game. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. So we're going to go over the problems, and then we'll see if we can't come up with some solutions.
So I guess the first problem that an anti-hero tends to do is they can be loners. They want to solve the problem themselves. They want to, be left alone. So they're not going to interact with the other characters. They're not going to interact with NPCs. So they wind up having their own game. And this is a major detractor.
Yeah, this is a group game. We can't just keep constantly splitting our attention between the party and this one player, because it detracts from everyone's experience. So you want to do things in a way that shares the experience, shares the spotlight. And the problem with anti-heroes, a lot of times, they're not good at that at all. So next up, we have performing actions and deeds that directly conflict with the rest of the adventuring party, whether it's members or the whole party. This could be the rogue that's always trying to steal and knowing that the paladin's right there and is not going to like that at all. Or it could be other murder hobo type actions that are going to really not jive with the party. Maybe you have a really pious cleric in the party and they're not going to take kindly to that.
Basically any senseless action that is like, oh, well, I'm just going to give in to this chaotic nature and I'm going to steal, kill, loot, maraud. Anything that would be unlawful in a group of heroes, that's going to stand out and it's going to cause problems.
Torture the prisoners, things like that. And you know what? The player generally knows what those hot buttons are, especially after you've played a session or two. And then the problem is you're playing, it's what my character would do. You're the anti-hero and you do it anyway, knowing that there's going to be consequences.
Right. And that then goes beyond character to character. That pushes boundaries between player versus player. So then the next and final problem is, you can really get into the introduction of darker themes that anti-heroes, have the ability to do, whether you're talking about, rape, the descriptive, vicious torturing, anything along those lines that could literally cause other players at the table to recoil in horror at your obvious joy in describing these things. And it might just be, well, I'm role-playing and I'm getting into my character, but it could be, an actual psychological problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line between anti-hero and villain sometimes, and you don't want to cross it, and you don't want to take people out of their comfort zone. There should be an agreement at the table of what things are going to be in the game. And the anti-hero is more likely to push those boundaries, as Ted said. So you have to tread lightly and respect the players at the table.
Yeah, social contracts, I think, are incredibly important. And, even if you need to start one after a game is already started because someone is starting to push those boundaries that make you feel uncomfortable, I feel a good gaming group needs to jive character to character and player to player. And you want to almost be a family where you're all enjoy seeing each other, every time you get together, whether it be streaming or whether it be at the table. And this style of character, when you're pushing those boundaries, you're isolating and alienating your character and yourself.
So that's some of the problems with an anti-hero. Now let's kind of jump into and discuss like some ways that we can work on fixing the problems or not having them come up at the table.
So I guess first up, we would say having goals and motives that are going to connect with, the rest of the group and the party.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent point right there. No matter what your character's moral compass is, in order to be an effective member of the party, in order to be a effective member of the group, that are playing the game, you really need to have characters that want to be together for whatever reason. They have to have goals that are kind of aligned. Even if there's like tension in the game and it's role playing, that's okay. But at the end of the day, like you still need the party's best interest to be your best interest as well, so that you can all jive together.
So, like kind of dovetailing to that, I would look at, you could wait for those ideal moments, things where it's like, all right, I am slightly anti-hero. I'm willing to go down this road. All right, you want to play the thief. All right, well, when you're the last person in the room, well, go ahead and, nick something. Or when everyone is distracted by this thing and it's not going to take away from the time, oh, well, I'm gonna pickpocket that one NPC. You do it sparingly when the situation comes up, and then you won't get caught, then you won't have these issues, and it all works out. Yeah, you might have to pass up on some really prized things, but you never know, how well this is going to be rewarded when you aren't going against what your group does.
So that kind of goes into the next point, which is, by not being blatant about things, and what you're kind of talking about too is compromising. Like, you're not flaunting it, you're not doing it in people's faces. Like, if you're playing the game and your actions are going to trigger the paladin, which could very well be PvP,
right.
Don't do that. Don't be blatant about it. Don't be obvious. Don't do it to have conflict with the party, because inter-party fighting is rarely fun, rarely works out. Ted had already pointed out that sometimes it can bleed into, out of game. If you look at a great example would be Wolverine, when he's confronted by his teammates about certain behaviors. He's kind of a jerk about it, but at the end, he generally compromises for their well-being and to make them at ease, and because he genuinely cares about them, likes them, and wants them to like him. So it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do this thing if I can help it. If he can't help it, he does the thing, absolutely. But he makes the effort and tries to work with those around him.
Now, with this, you could, get into these things and use that as an arc to, well, I want to become better and eventually, rise above and give your character, a growth story arc. Those things can be okay as long as, your party is involved and okay, with this. My current character is on an arc to be more heroic. He wasn't an anti-hero, but when confronted with, hey, we just killed a bunch of people, he wasn't really happy with, killing monsters, whatever. Killing monstrous humanoids, not so much a problem. But we killed humans, and that didn't really settle well with him when he was confronted by it. So along those same lines, if you've got the ability to, discuss with your fellow players, discuss with your DM a growth story arc, I think it could do wonders for, the story overall, as well as your own role-playing capabilities.
So finally, at the end of the day, Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games are cooperative games. And if everyone at the table is not having fun, what's the point? If you're going to play this kind of character, then maybe before the game starts, there should be a social contract, and everyone should understand what's expected, what kind of game we're talking about. Earlier we discussed the idea that anti-heroes might go into darker themes. Well, which themes are appropriate? When do you fade to black? Do you need to use some kind of consent system in the game in order to have things? Do you need to use an X card or something of that nature in order to have the other players be like, all right, that's enough. We want to back down from this, fade to black, however your group wants to do it. But, your fun shouldn't be at the expense of the other players at the table, and vice versa as well. Everybody needs to be having a good time. This game is for everybody at the table to enjoy together.
I've had, kind of some of those examples happen in my own, gaming history.
Ted wishes there was an X card back in the day. He's like, why isn't this working?
Well, it's not so much, myself, but I've talked to other people. I've been in games where there is the character.
Wait a minute. All I have to say is 3 words. Half giant dominatrix.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I tend to keep putting that one out. But yes, there were times that, yes, as the DM, that was where I was wanting to fade out of this scene. Thank you for bringing that back to my memory. But there was times where, we were gaming and there was a player who interacted with none of the party, none of the NPCs the party was interacting with, and they were doing their own thing for the 4 hours that the gaming
It's like running 2 games at once, and it's exhausting for the DM, and it's annoying for mostly everyone at the table.
And I had a session where a player did one thing that the action was very uncomfortable for the other player, and speaking to them after the fact, it was like this action made me consider leaving the game entirely. And it was like, holy crap. So it was one of those things that particular action was a button pushing moment for them. And, they didn't have that X card. They didn't have that, okay, we need to stop this scene and move on. And it's powerful, and you have to be careful about what you're doing because you never know what the other person at the table or sitting in their computer, at their computer, possibly on the other side of the world, you don't know what their experiences are. You don't know what they've had happen. And, you could really, just be making them going to an anxiety attack. They could panic over just the way you're describing something or the way you're doing something. So you really do need to be careful.
So yeah, hopefully you're playing this game with your friends and these are people you care about. And I think, most people, if you care about them, you're not going to want to do things that's going to be detrimental to them or your relationship or even your gaming group. So if you're going to play this type of character, it's fine, but just know what the boundaries are and stick to them. With that, let us know about the anti-heroes you've played in your games. How do you play them to make them jive with the rest of the party? Tell us all about it in the comments below. Before we all head on out, I want to take a moment to invite you to join Nerdarchy, the Adventuring Party. What can they expect over there, Ted?
Over on Patreon, we're creating products for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that both players and DMs alike can drop right into their game.
Every month we do giveaways and our patrons are automatically entered.
We do weekly hangouts with our patrons and more.
So quest on down to the description, join Nerdarchy, the Adventuring Party, and until next time,
stay nerdy.